Here we go.
All right, welcome Heartland Region to our special Zoom session from around the country, all about the relationship between the area director and the committee chair. We got a lot of stuff to go over, and just hopefully a lot of this stuff will be just a great way for you to listen and engage on topics with your committee chair that we're going to be talking about today. So I'd like to introduce everybody and have a chance for them to kind of share what their piece of the puzzle is today, and kind of where their perspective is going to come from in regards to what they're going to be sharing. So why don't we go ahead and start in the upper left-hand corner of my screen with Eric. So go ahead, Eric.
I'm Eric Protzman. I live in Evergreen, Colorado. Been involved with Young Life, came to faith in high school and Young Life, been involved about 25 years, and started Young Life here in Evergreen in 2007. And I've been committee chair twice, just most recently retiring about 10 days ago.
Wallace,
volunteer leader.
Krista, why don't you go next?
Okay, so I'm Krista Wallace, the new committee chair. My husband and I live in Evergreen, and we were on staff with Young Life for 7 years, and I've been involved for 35 years with Young Life since I was 14. So I just had to do the mental math.
I'll probably have you beat by a year.
Yeah, you do.
So same kind of story. Was involved with Young Life as a high school student and a volunteer leader in high school, and then took a hiatus in college, was involved in some other ministries. Met my wife, got back plugged in with Young Life, and we were on staff in the Dominican Republic for those 7 years. And then post that, committee and volunteer leader since then. So we've never really cut those ties.
Great. Andy?
Yeah, my name is Andy Morman. I was on staff in Evergreen, Colorado for about 9 years. I'm just about ready to complete my 15th year on staff. Currently an area director on the east side of Seattle, and have had the privilege of knowing Eric, and you'll soon meet Kaylin for a lot of years. And so, yeah, been a Young Life kid since high school, and married, have 3 kids, and we're loving this season of our lives. So that's me.
Great. Kaylin, what about you?
Hey, my name is Kaylin Riley. I am the current area director of Intermountain Young Life in Evergreen, Colorado. And I started Young Life in high school, was a Young Life kid my sophomore year, and was a volunteer leader for 5 years, and went on staff under Andy when he was area director in Evergreen in 2013, and then became the area director in 2017. So I'm the current area director of Intermountain Young Life.
Great. Thank you for all the introductions. We'll start with Andy. Andy, obviously, you served both in Colorado and now in Washington. As you think of, your experiences with the committee, as you think about, having 2 different committees, what are your observations? Like, what would you share? What are things you've learned? What are things you've taken in on committee that you would share with area directors as far as the things that you've been a part of, things you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's been interesting to be a part of a lot of these committee conversations, because I mean, yes, I've experienced kind of the non-existent committee model where I'm like, apparently we have a committee, but I've never seen them. That was when I was my first couple years on staff. I've been told we have a committee, but I'm not sure what their role is in my life and how they affect my life. There's been times where I've experienced the whole hey, area director, like, we need you to do these things, we expect you to do these things, and why aren't you doing these things? I've experienced the weight of that. And so I mean, I've also experienced the beautiful other side where I feel like I have a team of people who are with me, and we're arm in arm together in a mission for the sake of kids in Christ. And so, I mean, I've experienced a lot of it. A lot of it's been joyful. A lot of it's been really hard. So I empathize with a lot of the staff in the room and the staff that I've come in contact with, where there's an experience of being lonely and afraid in our mission that I think is epidemic. And I think that gosh, sometimes the committee and a committee chair relationship can be the cause of that fear and loneliness. But I also think it's the cure, and I've experienced that as well. And so I've experienced a wide variety of different kind of committee setups and experiences, but I've loved some of the realizations we've had over the last 5 or 6 years in terms of, oh, like this is one of the most important parts of our mission, to get right. And when we get it right, big things happen. So I'm excited to have this conversation today.
Okay, Eric, same question for you. What have you seen? What are observations you've seen in the realm of committees?
I'll say that I've seen it in 3 stages, Mark. I've observed, participated in, to my shame, the hire the area director and blame them model. Young Life can show up sometimes a little overconfident or a little over representing what they're going to do, and it can make it seem like they're going to take on everything and do it, and that they don't really need help. And then it kind of turns around and they start asking for help. And you get a dynamic going in the first of the 3 phases that I've seen, that either the area director or the committee chair or both come in with sort of a "you owe me" attitude. Area director may come in saying, I could have been a stockbroker, I could have made this money, I could have done this, but instead I'm here in your town. This town owes me to do these things. And you can have a committee chair going in, hey, we hired you, we raised the money for you here, you owe us. I mean, and it's just a terrible dynamic. And if any area directors are listening to that out there, any committee chairs are listening to that, search your heart for that one, because nothing will work if you hold that view as an area director or as a committee chair. The second phase came with the realization, and it was a blessing from our Lord and Savior to Andy and to me. I had, sometimes you want a committee chair, I'm a business person, okay, so I'm kind of that person. And I came in viewing the area director role as a vocational role. And so I addressed Andy as having a job, and a job with expectations, and this should be done by this time, and so on and so forth. And it didn't work out very well for either of us. And the Lord spoke to me, and he spoke to Andy, and it was, to me, it was, look, you're being kind of hard on this guy, and you are a person that loves people. Get in there and love him, and I'll get back to you. And I moved from watching an area director as a vocational role into a ministry role. And ministers both minister and they need ministered to. That really shifted things. And then the third level, where Andy and I, led by the Lord, figured out we're in this together. There are no problems that are Andy's or are mine. Every problem is ours. If Andy says we got a problem and I've caused it, Andy and I have to solve it. If there's a problem and Andy's caused it, Andy and I have to solve it. If there's another problem and Mark Sisler, wherever in Iowa, has caused it, Andy and I still have to solve it. That's it. That was the third level, and that's when things got good.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, as you transitioned, from Colorado to Washington, tell us a little bit about the role of the committee and the committee chair, in that transition.
Yeah, I mean, Eric and I had been on this journey of just, there's a longer story that we'd love to share you someday, but where we began our relationship. Eric was really responsible for hiring me, and we began our relationship just in love with each other, greatest friends, soon became our greatest enemies and hated each other. And then the Lord somehow did some magic where not only do I love Eric, but my wife loves Eric, which that is a whole other.
That's a long road back, baby.
If that's not a teaser, I don't know what is. But what to say is that I had experienced something with Eric in terms of partnership that that it was in transitioning to a new role, and where I would be entering into a new committee and a new committee chair. There were some non-negotiable things for me. In terms of, and even Kaylin might be able to echo some of this stuff. and her new committee chair relationship, where it's like I've experienced what it means to be in partnership with a committee chair, to do this thing with somebody else, arm in arm, and I'm just not willing to go back to the island that I think that a lot of our staff and myself included were on, in terms of just that lonely and afraid place. I just wasn't going to last on staff, and so from the very beginning, and thankfully, my new committee chair, Taylor, was able to hear Eric and my story and kind of what we've been through, and it turns out that he had always been just hungry for that type of a role. Like, he didn't want to be a helper. He wanted to be someone who was a partner and someone who was in it, hands dirty with an area director. And I think oftentimes he was told that he was supposed to be just someone who cheered me on. And so I think he was thankful from the very beginning of our relationship to know, like, no, this is going to be different. Like, we're accountable to each other. We are here for each other. We're available to each other. We're in this together. We're indivisible. You are my partner. You're not less than. And it's been a gift to me walking into a new relationship to have that as the backbone. I mean, I just real talk. I had a conversation before I got on this call that was heavy, that was hard, someone was disappointed with some stuff that was going on in our area, and I left it carefree. I know that I have a committee chair who's with me, that if there are things we need to fix, that he and I will do it together. And but that conversation 6 years ago would have destroyed me. I'd be out for a few days feeling horrible, and to walk out of a hard conversation, and to feel like I can take on those barriers and those difficulties is a gift. And I also know a lot of our staff don't feel that, and so that's why we're so passionate about this story of partnership and connection. So
how did prayer play a role in your relationship with Eric, changing from where you say it wasn't very good? I mean, I think you used some stronger words, right? But
yeah,
to where it became a friendship.
Man, I mean, there again, longer story, but there was as Eric and I, as the Lord was working on us, and it was difficult. There was some significant disappointment where I had disappointed Eric and Eric had disappointed me, and a lot of pain and hurt. And I think for both of us, the word probably Eric and mine's least favorite word is assumptions, because I think we realized that the enemy had used assumptions we had made about each other, in terms of our motivations, in terms of why we chose to do things, in terms of what the other person thought about me. I had countless conversations with Eric that I never actually had with him. As I was going to bed and stressing out, I was having conversations with Eric that, again, like, were just made up. They weren't real. And there was one day I remember I was mopping my floor at my house. My wife was putting the kids to bed, and I think I was listening to something on my headphones or whatever, and I just was overwhelmed with this conversation I was having, this painful conversation I was having with this imaginary Eric. And I just asked the Lord, I was like, Lord, this isn't of you. Would you please just end this dialogue? And it ended. And I went to the restroom, closed the door, sat on a closed toilet, let me be clear, and called Eric. And I was like, Eric, I'm so sorry. And I know I've hurt you, but I just yeah, it was just I don't even remember what I said, but it was one of those things where I was like, hey, I'm just done carrying this burden. And so and just to watch as the Lord redeemed things from that space was incredible. It's something that Eric and I look back on even today, of just like, man, we were in a hard spot. Like,
absolute truth. Had it been up to Andy and me, we wouldn't be speaking. We would not care about each other or for each other. And this is one of my best friends on the planet here. So the answer to your question, Mark, on prayer was the Lord answered prayers, spoken, unspoken, thought, unthought. He had dreams for this area, and he was going to get them done. And it was either going to happen in this go around or some future go around. And it is, everybody's got their 3 or 4 stories. I don't care what anybody thinks about what I think about God. This is my story. This is Andy's story. You couldn't take this away from us. as to who did it, because
Yeah.
it wasn't me and it wasn't him.
We're not that good.
No. But God is really good.
Yeah.
Mm.
Amen.
Kaylin, as you transitioned to the area director when Andy left for Washington, tell us about the role of the committee chair. Obviously, that was Eric. Just share with us, did you have any trepidation at that point in time? Things had gotten better between Andy and Eric. So was there any thoughts on your part, as far as how that was going to go, or just share with us your thoughts?
Yeah. So I stepped in to my role as AD about a year after Andy and Eric had repaired their relationship. And so I had seen it modeled really well. And I really didn't have any reservations about it. I actually didn't know the full story of Eric and Andy, and I think that was a blessing and something that I have learned as I have been in my role now, but didn't know it in the beginning. And I was in a really unique spot when I became area director. Um, I think I actually became area director and 3 weeks later went on maternity leave. So sorry about that. And my husband was in school, so we were a single income family, and I stepped into being area director with a new baby. And for women on staff, I feel like the loneliness is can be even more because we're trying to play a role of mother and we're trying to play role of area director. And I stepped in a place that really needed a partnership. And I don't think I would have survived. I mean, the first few months that I was on staff, we had some really hard things happen in our area. And I can honestly say I probably would have not stayed on staff had it not been for a partnership, and not going to bed every night knowing that it wasn't just me. This wasn't all on my shoulders. And thank God for that, because now, a little over 3 years later, I'm still here, and I don't see an end in sight. And I have another kid and a new committee chair, and a friendship with Eric, and now a friendship with Christo. That's really sweet.
How did you develop that feeling of partnership between you and Eric?
Honestly, we said it a lot. We would say over and over again, like, you are my partner, we are in this together. And sometimes it can feel really cheesy and like, we're partners, but that is the truth. And I think that when we speak that over and over again, it really becomes true on our hearts. And there were so many times that something would happen and I would call Eric or he would call me, and we just remind each other, hey, we got this together. And the weight that would take off was huge, in a time where sleepless nights were already a lot. I didn't need any more of those. So honestly, just saying it over and over again, this is my partner, we're in this together, and reminding yourself, like we've already said, that we're not here for Young Life, we're here for Jesus and for kids, our town, and our kids meeting the God of the universe. And to come back to that often, and to remind yourself that as partners, that's our focus. So yeah.
Okay. Krista, Chad, what do you guys have as far as thoughts on this topic so far?
I think I heard something said on a previous training video of how we can really overcomplicate our relationships in any realm, whether it's professionally within the business or relationally within ministry. And at the end of the day, it comes down to we're people and we need to feel known. We need to feel cared for. And we need to be in community. I think one of the things that people are drawn to Young Life is because it's a fun community where you feel known, and especially for kids, but as adults and Young Life staff and committee staff, when we uncomplicate that relationship, hey, we're friends. I mean, Krista is super excited to get to know Kaylin, and I'm really excited to get to know other folks that work up there, not because it's Young Life, not because it's my role, but because I just love people. And at the end of the day, this isn't a Young Life thing, it's a kingdom thing. Young Life is a pretty amazing tool in the belt of ministers, but at the end of the day, it's just Jesus, and it shouldn't be complicated. So simplifying it, I think undressing what it means to be in relationship with each other. Jesus did it. We do it with kids. We should definitely do it with each other. So that relationship between committee and staff is just that. It's a relationship. And I think what you said, Kaylin, about speaking it's truth, and it becomes our reality. Thank you, Eric, for doing that. I do sense that from you. You do speak the same thing over and over, and eventually believe it. Really. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
You know, here's
And I
the
would
story,
agree.
Andy. Oh, go ahead, Kaylin.
Oh no, I was going to say I agree with
Krista.
Chad. I mean, this is a team effort. It's not my responsibility. It's not Eric's. It's not Kaylin's. It's ours, right? And so we own this as a team, and we fail as a team, and we succeed as a team, and we grow as a team, right? And so blame should never enter into our posture. It's just not effective. It's not helpful. It's divisive. And so we need to work as a team and see each other as teammates and encourage one another as teammates.
That's good.
Andy and Eric, you guys kind of shared that obviously things were rough for a while, and then the Lord moved in great ways and brought a lot of change, a lot of really great kingdom change to your relationship. What would you say to an area director or a committee chair that are watching this that maybe aren't in that partnership relationship right now? They're in the stage where they want the other person to do more, or the area director doesn't feel supported. How would they go about bringing the change that you guys experienced into their area? What would be, I'm not talking about 3 easy steps, but if you were saying, hey, here are some things you could do to start bringing about partnership change for your committee, between your area director, your chair, what would you say?
Andy mentioned about assumptions, and I think I'd start there. The first thing is, don't approach me and ask me to support Young Life. Don't approach me and ask me to support you. Don't approach me and ask me to help you. That puts me on a different level. It discounts me, it elevates you, and it creates lonesomeness for you. And invite me, you have to presume that I already care about the kids in my town. Why don't you approach me and say, you know what, there are a lot of kids at that school. I think I can really help this community get to those kids.
Yeah.
Eric, how can I work with you so we can really reach those kids? There is a world of difference. Anybody listening here, if you invite people to support Young Life, that's tiny. I refuse to support Young Life. I love Young Life. I came to faith in it, but I can't allow that posture. We're here for our town and our kids. You want to join me in that, you're going to get a volcano of support. Andy, what do you say?
I would even, maybe even a step before what Eric just shared, of this idea of, Eric and I talked a lot about aligning expectations. This idea of, if you're at the beginning stages of that relationship with a committee chair, that, maybe it might be a lukewarm relationship. Maybe it's somewhat problematic. It's somewhere in that spectrum, to literally just sit down with your committee chair and just be like, hey, here's what I just want to make a list of what I'm expecting of you, and for them to do the same thing, and vice versa, and just to be able to share and put on the table, hey, I just want to make sure that we are clear on our expectations of each other, And I think that more often than not, what we've seen, and a lot of what Eric and I struggled with, is that we were on totally different planets in our expectations for each other.
And we've done this, as Andy and I have spoken around the country, we invite them to separately write this down and then compare notes, and you go, it's a wonder we speak at all.
Yeah. And honestly, for a lot of committee chairs and area directors, that has been the avenue on which they start to talk about partnership. And when they can get those things out of the way. I mean, even in a scenario like with Krista and Kaylin, like for them to begin their relationship, talking about like, let's just get our expectations on the table, only clears the way and just removes all the stuff that eventually is going to be landmines that they step on down the road. So I think that it's a healthy practice for any area director committee chair relationship, however good or bad their relationship is and their partnership is, just to make sure that that's a checkpoint, because eventually you're going to start to automatically identify like, oh man, like I am really disappointed right now because I've assumed that so and so is going to do this and they haven't. But I don't. If you're really honest, have you even communicated that to them, or have you just assumed it? So those things are major landmines that can destroy relationships and destroy partnerships, and a lot of times those aren't even talked about in the committee chair area director relationship. So that's huge.
Andy, why don't you share a little bit about what you'd say to an area director who thinks, I'm not sure the committee's really the way to go. It seems, burdensome. It seems like too much work. I'm not sure it's worth the effort. How would you respond to somebody who maybe is in that situation or is starting to be swayed to feel that way and in that mindset?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's we were on a call yesterday talking about how committees were kind of built wrong from the beginning, and this idea that we're trying to kind of relook at committees and be like, okay, like this is the most important work in our area, but we need to look at them in a different way, and that's the reason why we're having this conversation. I would say this as an area director, that I look at committees and adult work and adult support as really like my legacy, like how well I do in the work with adults and in partnership with my community will be my legacy in my area. Eric and I talk a lot about how like the most consistent thing in our communities is our community. Like staff come and go, leaders come and go, and that community that is going to remain for the long term. Like that's the reason why we invest in adults. And so I think that there's a piece there where it's like, one, you as a staff person, you can't do it on your own. If you're a young staff person and you think that you can do it, you think you got it figured out, like it serves you well to realize that you don't have it figured out, and that's okay. You have a community of people, you have adults in your life who want to do this with you, and actually, let's be honest, they know more than you. They have more life experience, and so the more that we can kind of elevate those around us in partnership and to do this with them, the better legacy you're going to have in an area, and the less of an impact you leaving someday is going to have, and the community will get better as a result. And so I just have, just me as a staff person, as I really take pride, is like I want to leave anywhere that I'm at. I get a chance to serve. I want to leave it to where it's going to catapult after I leave. And I think the only way you can do that is through investing in your adult community. So,
okay. Eric, how do you structure your weekly meetings? I mean, you've done this with a couple different staff people over a number of years. I think one of the things we've talked about is how important it is for the area director and the committee chair to meet on a weekly basis, face to face. What does that look like? How do you structure that?
Well, Andy and I came up with a format that's been used in Intermountain Young Life for 6 years, something. I don't know. Anyway, something like that. It is this. Here's the formality. We start with prayer. Believe in prayer. We start with prayer. We know what the Lord's done for us. We're not about to leave him now. Secondly, I say to Andy, what are you afraid of? And now, in a new updated version, and Kaylin looks at me and says, Eric, what are you afraid of? And that is not limited to direct ministry. It's not limited to ministry in general. And we just believe profoundly you can't do ministry if you're afraid. Mm-hmm. Andy's dealt, we've talked about the lonesome deal. When you got a partner, the lonesomeness virtually evaporates. And if you're feeling lonesome, you can call your committee chair or somebody else and things get better. But to have the sense of fear over work things or over personal things, you got to get it out there. So start with prayer. We talk about our fears. What's the first agenda item beyond that? Our fears. There's no point. If you're afraid you're not going to meet the monthly budget, or if you're down unexpectedly 2 volunteer leaders, there's no way you can just happily go about the rest of your day. You got to address those things. So I would say most of the time, our meetings are just going, how are we figuring this out? I don't want you afraid, partner. I don't want you afraid. And they've helped me figure stuff out. I've helped them figure it out. Mostly we've either figured it out together or we've looked at each other and go, neither one of us have any idea how to do this. But we know somebody and we can go ask them. So that's the way we structure it. And I'll tell you what, it is one of the most pleasing things that I've been around. The prayer and being honest about your fears. And then Andy and I found out, it took us a year to really start building trust where we could look at each other and just think good things. And we'd ask each other what we were afraid of. And Andy, what was the answer?
Eventually it became nothing. Eventually I was like, oh, wait, you ask me that question every week and I am surprised by it now. Like I have no answer for it, and so I'd love to hear, Kaylin, what was you walking into that system as a new area director of being asked about your fears, which is a pretty intimate question. Like it takes some vulnerability to talk about what you're afraid of. It takes a lot of trust. What was that like for you to walk into that, that type of scenario?
It was honestly really helpful, because it wasn't, like one of you said, it wasn't just ministry related, it was family related, it was anything under the moon related. It was genuinely just what my fears are. And that makes it so much more of a relationship. Like you were saying, Chad, like we just care about each other and we have a relationship. And so why would you not ask that question? And it's true. It's fun to go to meetings where you were like, yeah, I'm not really afraid of anything. Great. And so sweet to vocalize that and to feel that freedom with your partner and then be able to look at them and see what their fears are, and they could be different, and you jump into them together. So
I'd like to make a distinction too. When you get to the point of no fears, that's not like it's easy going. There's still a ton of work to do. But your fears in the past were you didn't even know how to do it and you didn't have anybody to do it with. So you were fearful of the work. We will look at each other after saying we don't have any fears and go, but we got to roll up our shirt sleeves because we've got a lot to do. Just doing it without fear is better.
I think that's a good clarification of, there's a lot of times that it was like, oh gosh, yeah, we have a ton to do right now, but I'm not fearful of it because I know I can do the work. So yeah.
We talked about some of the questions that were raised by some of our people. We had questions like how do we help the committee ask for financial support without feeling awkward? We said, what does it mean to join committee and sharing the ownership of the ministry for the long run? How do I get my committee to take ownership? How does an individual member get involved in the committee if there's good or bad culture? And we kind of said that part of that is maybe a symptom of a larger problem. Andy, what would you say to these questions, and how would you look to build on this as you think about this?
This is going to sound like an oversimplified answer, but it is absolutely the core of the answer, which is all of those answers are answered when that committee chair relationship alongside the area director is established. When there is a cohesive unit between area director and committee chair, like the committee becomes more productive. The adult community feels like they have something to follow, like a rally point. I mean, like funding happens because you have multiple people who are thinking through it and trying to figure out what it looks like. It's not just you trying to solve different problems out of a scarcity mindset. Again, oversimplified, but I would say like, and it probably isn't. You can't do one thing. There's no one thing fixes all, except for the one thing that you are in control of as a staff person, which is that committee chair relationship. And so I think you start there, and then you figure out all of those answers together. Like those are questions you ask in partnership, and you solve in partnership. And so again, we overcomplicate it. We overcomplicate it's relationship, and it's a relationship where we get to solve hard problems together, and to have disagreements together, and to get to the other side of those disagreements, and move in a solid single direction together. And so don't get bogged down in the issue. Focus on the relationship.
I'm just going to jump in and say one thing. Our 19 years in the Dominican Republic, we had to learn one thing. We had to learn how to do relationships, because if we didn't do relationships, nothing else would happen in this culture. And so coming from a task-oriented culture into a relationship-oriented culture was a big transition for us. But now we come back into this task-oriented culture, and it still applies. If we don't have relationship with one another, we're not going to get much done. And so if we start with relationship, if we dive deep, if we really develop healthy relationships with one another, we're going to be able to do things that we never imagined possible. But it starts off in relationship.
I think also that we find young area directors in particular kind of get a little freaked out about working with adults. They're really comfortable working with kids, but work on that, area directors, because the skill you use, your very finest skill, is creating relationships. And we're here with our arms open. We're not here to fight you. If you ask us just to help, give us small potatoes, stuff to do, yeah, we're going to look pretty uninteresting. But we're the people that started the soccer teams. We're the ones that built the bank. We're the ones that built the town. Okay, we know how to do stuff. And if you're thinking we're running away and irresponsible, think hard about how that relationship's getting built. Use those skills that you have. We want to be loved just like you. I promise you, I'm an 8-year-old boy. I want to be loved. I am not needy. I'm not desperate. I am a child of God, and I want to be loved. Don't treat me different than a kid, because I am a kid.
So pursuing the adults on the committee, whether it be the committee chair or just someone that's on the committee, pursuing them the way that you might as an area director pursue students, right? Getting to know them, showing up where they are, investing in that relationship, and just kind of wasting time together is so important on the adult level, is kind of what I'm hearing, right?
No different.
Yeah.
And I would even go further, even beyond committee, the principals and the coaches at the school. I mean, you pursue adults, the same adults that are involved in our kids' lives, we pursue them too, right?
Yeah.
No, it's good. It's good. What do you look for, in a committee chair? So we think maybe we have some people out there that are in the process of looking for a new committee chair. The old committee chairs, kind of coming off of 3 years maybe of serving, and so there's going to be a transition, and you start praying about, Lord, who would you bring next? What are we looking for as we think of a committee chair?
I told Kaylin last February, I think, that I'd like to look at a transition, and I'd like to look at it by the end of the year. So it was 8, 9, 10 months. And we set about putting together a list of what we thought would constitute a successful, giving somebody a chance to be successful as committee chair. First thing is a follower of Christ. And as obvious as that might be, you can get the PTA president from last year that really did a good job, that goes to church and going, maybe I'll take a crack at leading this one. You need don't take this judgment, but you know what I'm saying. You want somebody who is a faithful day in, day out follower of Christ. That's first, immutable. Secondly, you need a connector. You need somebody who can't help but connect people together. That's what they love to do. That's what they want to do. You can't stop them from doing it. If you don't have that, it's tough. They don't create community. God creates community, and we get to participate in it. But the connector plays a really important role. They have to prize and be able to nurture donor relationships. For us, they had to agree to meet face to face. You can tell from this video why we all believe in it so much. Face to face weekly. If it's Zoom, it's still face to face. We have regional committee chair meetings. We said that'd be a good idea to require that to continue to go to those. And then they have to, at least initially, they can change these things over time, but agree to our core values that we've got written down, the things that we really think are important, because if you don't agree with those, it's going to be tough, because our culture is built on 3 core values. And so that's where we are.
Good. Is it hard? Do you think it's hard to find somebody that would fulfill those characteristics?
I'll tell you, we don't go at the characteristics.
Yeah.
I think that if I'm an area director out there going, there are a couple of you out there as area directors are saying this, it would be easy if I had that row of people that I'm seeing here on Zoom. That'd be just fine. Why don't you pack them up from Evergreen, bring them to my town, everything will be fine. Mm-hmm. Okay. I want to promise you, we exist in every community. Unless you ask us to support Young Life, unless you ask us to be our helper. We love our kids and we want them to meet Jesus. Meet us in that, join us in that, encourage us in that. Know that you can come in and go, there are things that I can do. You should see my camps. You should see the stuff I can do here. You can bring so much. But the first thing area directors who are going, how in the world do I find those people? Just go find a friend. Just find a friend. That might not be your committee chair, but I'll tell you, in my experience, about 50% of the time it ends up being God puts people together. But go find a friend, somebody you can create a relationship with, and go, will you just walk with me for the next 6 months? I need intense prayer. I need somebody to meet with every month. I am not trying to recruit you as a committee chair. I'm going to be looking for one at some point. Maybe you'll find one for me. But it's going to start with that relationship. It's going to start with your heart in the right spot, not worst case scenario that we started and sounded harsh to you then, and it now should sound terrible to you. You owe me. Whew. You're not going to get anybody. Not a thing.
Krista, what was it like for you to walk into this role, one that is elevated and had clarity attached to it of like, hey, like, right? I mean, like you actually knew what you were getting yourself into. And I mean, was it true? Are my assumptions true that like, you're like, oh, I would love to like be a partner rather than a helper, right?
Yes. So when I first met Kaylin, which was about 6 months ago, we knew we were moving to Evergreen, and I just reached out to her and said, hey, we're moving. We've been involved in Young Life. We want to stay involved in Young Life, and I just want to meet you for coffee. So we met for coffee in little town, Idaho Springs. And there was just this really cool connection, and I think because I had been praying about what I want, I mean, just being prayerful about this whole scenario. And I'm assuming, I'm going to say that Kaylin was prayerful as well. We came together. It was just this God-oriented time. We met for about an hour. And when I walked out of there, I was on cloud 9. I was like, I have a new friend. And she's my neighbor, by the way, because we're building right in front of her house.
We can see each other's houses. It's fine.
But going back to, yes, we are just people, and we need community coming into this new place. And we were prayerful about it. And this is where God has led us. And when we were approached to, to consider this leadership, I just said, we're going to be involved in Young Life. I want to say in Spanish, como quiera. Either way. And if you want us to lead, then we're willing. Right. I mean, so, I think, from the person who's saying yes, we need to be prayerful about it. It's not just a community service, right? I know that this is a calling, and I want to say yes to God's calling. And so let's be prayerful, both in seeking and in finding and nurturing that relationship.
we think of this weekly meeting between the chair and the, and the area director, how does this work? How do you organize the meeting? I guess Kaylin and Eric, what does that look like?
Kayla?
Well, like we talked about, we've started off talking about our fears, and a lot of our agenda typically can roll out of that. And you may be thinking to yourself like, oh, that feels very like you're just trying to combat whatever's happening in that moment, but that's not true at all. We also have an agenda that we both put stuff into over the week, and we also, we talk, and it's already happened with Krista and I, which is not surprising. We just tend to talk on the phone or text a lot. So our agenda is kind of a rolling agenda, has quite a bit of stuff on it, and we just tackle whatever needs to be done then, but we always start with our fears. So yeah.
And we have our top 5 priorities listed and explicit that we've agreed on. The top priority is the top one, the second one's the second. And we build our agenda around those priorities. And if they don't fit in those priorities, we pretty much don't do them.
Okay, that's good. As we kind of look to wrap things up, what are the 2 most important things you can think of that, someone could do starting today?
I'll take it to start with, get others' opinions, but I think that don't shock anybody. This is done. What we're talking about is happening now in a lot of places in the mission, but it is not typical. Don't shock your supervisor. Let them know what your thoughts are on this, and if you want to do that. Don't shock your current committee chair. They didn't sign up for this. Give them a chance to respond. They don't have to become this. If this sounds good to you, that doesn't mean that person's going to change overnight. If you're meeting once a month, 15 minutes before the committee meeting, that's what they're comfortable with. That's all they want to do. Recognize and honor that. But have the conversations, and you're welcome to reach out to Kaylin, to me, to Andy. We have conversations, and people go, is this really real? And I hope you get a sense that it is. So I'd start with a conversation with your supervisor, then I'd start with a conversation with your committee chair, and get your heart right before you go into any of those things.
Yeah. Even that tangible, if you were ready to go there, and your committee chair was willing just to sit down and to do that exercise of, I'm just going to do some pre-work and write down, here's what I expect of my committee chair, and to have them do the same thing, and just in a place of vulnerability, let's just put these on the table and let's just see where we're starting from. And so if that seems applicable to you, I would say like that's a great tactile beginning of this journey together towards partnership. And like Kaylin said, you just got to say this over and over. I think for both of us, for Kaylin and myself, it took us a year of just, and this will be true for you, Krista, too, is like, we just have to like call each other partners, almost to like where we laugh about it, but we might actually believe it in 12 months, and it's, there was numerous times where Eric would have to say like, hey, next time we should talk about that before you make that decision because we're partners. And I'm like, did it again. And so it's a journey, it's a process, but it begins someplace. So have that conversation.
That's great. Is there anything that anybody wants to share that you're like, hey, we really need to talk about this that we haven't talked about in regards to this topic?
I think Young Life just does what Jesus did, and that's walk with kids. And I love what you said, Eric, about you being an 8-year-old kid. I think boys in general, there's a certain point where inside our kid is alive and well, and maybe more so than our better halves. But if we're not doing contact work with our committee chairs and vice versa, it's not going to happen. Kaylin, we are so excited to live by you guys and
go skiing, mountain biking, running.
Yeah. That's what the kingdom's about. It's loving God and loving each other. And if we're not doing that with our committee chairs, like you said, if we're only meeting with them a few minutes before the committee meeting once a month, man, what a bummer, you know? I mean, I can promise you, if they're involved in Young Life, and especially at the committee level, they've got to be pretty fun, you know? And if you can just kind of undress the formality behind it and just go have fun with them and spend some time with them on both sides, great. I mean, I can promise you that's an add value to your day and your week. So
and I'll just say this, that rigor without relationship leads to resentments, right? If we're asking people to do hard things around us and there's no relationship there, well, the fruit of that's going to be resentment on both sides, right? So we get to that level of rigor, we get to that level of success when we develop relationships with one another. So, and we do that with our students, we do that with the adults around us. So go back to that relationship. We're good at developing relationships. We really, really are. We just have to be intentional and mindful to do it with everybody.
There's no age cutoff.
There's no age cutoff. It doesn't stop when they graduate.
All I'm saying is that I'm really glad that I got these. I got Krista's committee chair now. You're convincing me more and more.
Great.
And my hat is off to Andy Mormon. This area is thriving for the basis that he put down. We've both grown as men. We've grown as friends. I'm incredibly grateful to Kaylin Riley, who stepped in, who is just hitting it out of the park. And I love where it's going. And I love that I can step away 10 days ago without any fears. This area is, its brightest future is there. We have a new committee chair with a worldview and a different way of looking at things. And that is going to add to this. I cannot wait. I don't feel bad. People have called me, hey, what's the deal? Why are you leaving? It's like, are you kidding me? I'm leaving because I'm proud of where it is. It is strong. It is strong financially. It is strong spiritually. It's strong in direct ministry. It's a perfect time to step away. Couldn't be happier. Couldn't be more grateful for what this has done for my life, my friendships, and things that I've learned. This is not a slog. It's a lot of work, but it's a joy.
Good. All right. Well, thanks so much for all the things that we have learned, that you've shared, that you've commented on. Certainly grateful for the time and that each of you was willing to give. Hopefully this is something that can be used outside of our region and can be used in other places. And so praying that it will be that. So with that, we can go ahead and stop things and end things for today.
Sure. And I'd ask everybody as we're wrapping this up and you're getting off wherever you are in Iowa or Illinois, would you pray for Intermountain Young Life? We got kids here and we would love to pray for yours.
Can I actually pray for all